Aloha everybody, welcome to another RuneFest 2019 coverage video. For this video we're going to talk about the new upcoming Elder God Wars dungeon. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the video. Let's go.
Cats is the illest. What you talking about, Willis?
Alright guys, so this is probably the least thing that was talked about in the RuneFest reveals this year, probably because it's the furthest down the line in terms of release dates and the least developed so far. So I had to extrapolate some things from the reveals itself as well as the following QA to get a good idea of what we could expect with this update. So let's jump into it. First off, the Elder Gods were generally thought to have worked together over the lifespan of the universe or universes, creating worlds and whatnot. But apparently, throughout those ages, they were often in conflict with one another, and it seems to be the case that they are finally in conflict once again. As I said, not much was revealed about the Elder God Wars dungeon, but we do know that we can expect it to come into the game summer of 2020. Next year. Production of this update has already begun underway, so it's just a matter of time before we're going to be able to play it. Now, prior to its release, there will be 2 quests coming out that will help build up the storyline of this God Wars dungeon. There is Desperate Measures, which is a sequel to the recent Desperate Times, as well as a quest called the City of Sentistan, which you can imagine, if you're familiar with that storyline, the kinds of things it delves into. So as I said earlier, not much was revealed about this particular update on the main stage, so I had to go to the QA to get a little bit more info, and this is what I found out. Now, in terms of difficulty, it will be similar to previous God Wars dungeons. You can go in with your groups, or you could choose to do it solo. If you really know what you're doing, Jagex imagines that, most people will solo it. Either way, it is meant to be a step up from God Wars Dungeon 2. How much harder is yet to be seen, but it will be easier than Solak. They also say that each boss doesn't necessarily have to be the same difficulty. One could be slightly above God Wars Dungeon 2, and another could be just under Solak, so we're gonna have to wait and see. Also, while coming up with concepts, they toyed around with a few different ideas. First off, what does it even mean to be a God Wars dungeon? Well, basically they define it as, it has to have some range of bosses, at least 4 to be a little more specific, and each boss has to be related to different factions. Each faction has to have mobs or followers that in some way also relate to the faction. Some thoughts that they were playing around with were really shaking up some of the concepts and aspects of a God Wars dungeon. For example, do you even need a kill count? What if killing mobs removes some buff from the boss fight? So killing some or killing a few would make the fight easier for you. But if you enjoy a tougher fight, you might want to skip that and be willing to jump in right away. This is just an idea and doesn't mean it's going to be in the final build, but regardless of what they decide, they will be talking with the community to help shape this update. Finally, in terms of rewards, obviously they didn't say much, and they definitely steered clear of mentioning any type of numbers, so we don't know really what to expect in terms of tier. However, Mod Timbo did say that you can look at the other 2 God Wars dungeons to get an idea of the kinds of things that they will try to do with this one. So me personally, I suspect that we're going to get obviously armor sets and weapons of each combat style, with some form of shared item amongst all the generals. For example, in God Wars Dungeon 1, it was the God Sword shards. In God Wars Dungeon 2, it was the dormant armor pieces. And each general will probably drop a unique item that can be combined with those shared drops. Again, in God Wars Dungeon 1, it was the hilts to make the God Sword. In God Wars Dungeon 2, it was the crests to make the armor pieces. Again, that's just my speculation, so do take that with a grain of salt, but I imagine that's probably something they want to do this time around as well, since it is a tradition when you're talking about God Wars dungeons. Anyways, that pretty much wraps up all we have in terms of the Elder's God Wars dungeon. As I said, this was probably the least discussed, and I did have to pull from different areas to get enough information for us to get an understanding of what to expect. But hopefully you can appreciate that. With that, I'm gonna wrap up the video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed yet and you want to stay up to date on all things RuneScape related, hit that subscribe button. More RuneFest 2019 coming at you shortly, so stay tuned. I appreciate you guys watching. I am out. Aloha.